Okay. I'm just quickly taking a look. I was asked. Hello.
Go ahead. I think it's the network that's slow.
Okay, that's fine. So I was saying I was requested to do a quick session with you people on how to monitor and evaluate projects and business operations. And this evening, we're going to spend a very interactive moment with monitoring the life of every program that you want to run. If you must be very successful and to tell what difference you are making, then monitoring and evaluation is a component of development work that you cannot shy away from. So the person speaking to you, Joybert, has briefly talked with you. I started off my career working with the African Development Bank project, those who know GP Derodep, which is a multi-billion project that was sponsored for the Northwest. Thereafter, I joined the German Commission, where I functioned in the monitoring and evaluation unit. I transitioned to Plan International, where I still serve as the regional monitoring and evaluation coordinator. And since then, I had to bounce back to work with Nascent Solution, which is a program sponsored by the US Department for Agriculture. So I serve as the country monitoring and evaluation officer. And away from that, I'm a Chevening Scholar 2012, and I'm also a Commonwealth Scholar 2019, where I'm currently undertaking my PhD program in international rural development. So basically, our interaction this evening is just going to revolve around my personal experiences and how I try to reconcile practice and literature in the world of monitoring and evaluation. So we will move on to say, basically, I would love to ask you people, even before I get to this stage, what basically, when you hear of monitoring and evaluation, what comes to your mind? Feel free to unmute yourself and to speak up just 1 minute. When you hear of monitoring and evaluation, what comes to your mind? What is the first thing? Please, you can unmute yourself and then you speak.
Yeah, performance assessment.
Performance assessment. Thank you. Who else?
Operations supervision.
Operations supervision. So when you hear about monitoring and evaluation, you think about supervision, like that. Yes? You think about performance management, performance indicators, yes? Any other person? Okay, I'm sure we're going to discover a lot about monitoring and evaluation, what monitoring and evaluation is all about. Let's move on. Each time we talk about monitoring, the first thing that comes to our mind, because we are talking about business, we're talking about projects, we're talking about programs. The first thing that comes that monitoring and evaluation is so much concerned about is value for money. The value for money. And so the first thing that you've seen me drop there are banknotes. I'm sure anybody who is looking at this will already be informing his or herself that you can't effectively be talking about monitoring and evaluation when part of it is not about money, to investigate what value that money has been able to generate. Secondly, you can see the M&E officer himself who comes on board. Every organization that wants to ensure that what they have planned is what they are achieving, the impact they anticipated is the impact they are finally delivering, they need to install a person called the monitoring and evaluation officer. And what is the role of that monitoring and evaluation officer? You find the person I've just brought on board, he's holding something. I want somebody to tell me, what is that person holding and looking through? What is the person holding?
Magnifying glass.
A magnifying glass. I love that. And what is the purpose of that magnifying glass?
You use a magnifying glass to view something that is supposed to be smaller, bigger enough in order to have a picture of what you are looking at.
In order to see a bigger picture of what is a distance away from you. So amazing. I'm just going to drop something. What you're going to see in front of that M&E officer, the monitoring and evaluation officer, is the project book. So the monitoring and evaluation officers don't operate in space. Yes, the project has been written and the M&E officer is looking at the project document, and this project has been funded and money made available. And so this M&E officer is looking critically to look at what was planned and what is actually being delivered. What are the processes involved? What are the activities that were planned? What are the timelines that are allocated for this particular project? And so on. Who are the stakeholders that are involved? Who are the beneficiaries, the direct beneficiaries and the indirect beneficiaries that were captured in the project document? All of that. The monitoring and evaluation officer is there with the magnifying lens to look critically to remind people in the organization, oh, my colleagues, you know, you are the head of nutrition, you are the head of education, you are the head of finance. This is what we budgeted to spend on this number of activities. How far have we gone with these activities? We plan to train 500 people on this. How far have we gone with the training program and how many people have attended the training? What is there to prove that the training has been effectively conducted? A pre-test and a post-test for us to measure the difference the training is making. So all of that, the M&E officer is coming on board very strongly to be able to analyze. Now, what are you seeing? What has dropped next? Can somebody tell me what has dropped next? Can somebody tell me what has dropped next? I've dropped something.
Yes.
What do you see?
Those are cupboards.
Cupboards. And what do you think they're used for?
They are used to classify documents according to their various functionalities and categories.
According to their categories. In the filing cabinet, every monitoring and evaluation officer has a filing cabinet where reports, be it activity reports, end of project reports, interim evaluations, all of those reports, they need to be documented and filed accordingly. Why we do this is because there is always room for learning. We need to document our challenges. We need to document the lessons learned. And if there is room for continuation for the project, for the program, for the business opportunity, there is always something to fall back as a foundation to refer to how far we have gone, what mistakes did we commit, and how do we redress them? How did we overcome them? So documenting this is very important. But it is not only for the sake of the internal use of the organization, it's also a donor requirement. Every donor will be requesting the implementing agency to be able to furnish them with reports to tell the progress of the project, the progress of the program, and the progress of the business opportunity, be it a social enterprise or whatever. We'll move on. What do you see next?
The calculator.
Yes. What for?
For doing cost analysis.
Cost analysis. Yes. I started by dropping some banknotes. Now I'm dropping a calculator to let you know that for any project, for any business operation, when you have budgeted, you need to always think about what goes into any activity in the right quality, in the right quantity. Why we're dropping the calculator there is for us to be very sure that what we are giving out is well calculated. And secondly, we need to understand that with monitoring and evaluation, it's not just what is happening in the field, it's also what is going in injections in terms of finances. Let's take a critical example. Probably in the middle of the presentation, we are going to interact so much about the different examples, or how we're going to go about. But at this stage, know that there is the necessity for us to know exactly there are some projects that will say each beneficiary is supposed to be given 1,000 francs, and we are targeting 1,000 beneficiaries. Then let's move to our calculator. You said you budgeted this. How much have you spent? How much is remaining? So all those things need to be taken care of. Something has shown again, and I looked at this is the clock, and is M&E, monitoring and evaluation, deals with time. When did you plan to do this? Have you done it in time? Just imagine somebody with a project on how to improve the agricultural productivity of smallholder farmers. And then you supply farm seedlings when it is out of the planting season. Do you think you're doing any good to the farmers?
No.
Not at all.
Not at all. So the time factor is of great essence to a monitoring and evaluation agent. And we'll move on. Definitely, you see something there. What is anybody familiar with that? Is anybody familiar with the traffic lights?
Yes.
Yes. When you see the traffic light, what comes to your mind?
It tells you about when to stop, when to start. In fact, it's a programming indicator or a plan indicator.
Perfect. Perfect. And when you see a red light, it tells you that you need to stop. When you see a yellow light, it tells you you can continue, but be very careful. When you see a green light, it tells you it's all good for you to go. For those who have been driving in cities with traffic lights, that is the same thing with projects and programs. Monitoring and evaluation is there to let you know the green lights, the yellow lights, and the red lights within the program's implementation life cycle. So as a monitoring and evaluation professional, you need to look out for all of these things. Some organizations are sick. If some organizations were to be breathing like human beings, some of them would be dead by now because some are sick and there is nobody to diagnose them, to tell them that they are currently very critical. And before they know, such organizations without this warning signs of monitoring and evaluation, they tend to wind up and people are wondering, this organization was one existing, this company was one existing. Why is it that it has suddenly disappeared? It's because there wasn't anybody and there wasn't any monitoring and evaluation indicators to tell whether the organization or the company is progressing in the right direction. I will move on to indicate this road sign is very, very important. You need to know when there are bumps on the road, where there is a kind of a sharp bend. You need projects are like that. And so monitoring and evaluation encompasses all of these aspects. The indicators, the timeline, the reporting, the budgeting part of it, and so on. So as M&E professionals, as students, MBA students taking interest in this aspect, please be mindful of these critical aspects of monitoring and evaluation. I feel like this is the summary of M&E. If I can end the presentation tonight at this stage, this is basically what monitoring and evaluation is all about. I've taken a lot of time on this slide because the subsequent slides, I won't pay a lot of attention on the literature, but rather I'll be more interested in getting some of the questions and concerns that you may have to share for me to share my experiences with you. Is it good for me to continue? Is it good for me to continue?
Yeah, well, there is a format which the presenter presents. Then afterwards we ask questions. But I don't know if you accept questions at each stage or at each slide, sir.
No, I just want to be sure that people are following. There is a point I will stop for questions.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So monitoring and evaluation. What is monitoring all about? We say monitoring is something which is continuous. You have to continue regularly collect and analyze information on the execution of that project. So what you need to be mindful about monitoring is that it's something which is continuous. On a second note, we have to notice that there should be a rationale why you have to monitor a project. Because of time constraint, I wouldn't be asking you, why do you think we monitor projects? It's obvious. The first thing is that we want to provide early warnings and early indications of the progress and the achievements that that project is recording. From the start of it throughout the life cycle, monitoring is progressive. Monitoring is regular. It is routine. And we also see that monitoring is done because we want to assist timely decision-making. There are moments in the life cycle of a project where I would say, oh, I'm sorry, the capacity building component of this project is progressing very slowly. Can we speed up the activities by increasing the number of facilitators, or maybe bringing in different zonal training programs to be running simultaneously? It may come as a recommendation, because me as monitoring and evaluation, as a monitoring and evaluation officer within the organization, I've seen that we are running behind the time frame of the project. And so I'll be able to assist in making that timely decision within the organization. What is monitoring? Monitoring will be something which is more systematic. It comes up within certain time frames. Why monitoring will be something continuous? Evaluation will be systematic, will come on at different stages of the project. Along the line, we are going to discover the different types of evaluation. And when we're looking at the different types of evaluation, please pay particular attention to that which will be very much applicable to you as growing professionals in the area. Why do we conduct evaluation? First, is mainly to determine the efficiency, the effectiveness, the impact, the sustainability, and the relevance of the intervention. Basically, when you look at these critical ingredients of evaluation, they correspond to what we call the DAC criteria, DAC evaluation criteria that have been introduced by the European Union. And so this is essentially why we conduct evaluation. Make sure that our projects were efficient enough, the implementation process was effective enough, if we can see the impacts that are visible, if the project can prove to be sustainable, and if it is actually relevant. We'll be taking some examples as we progress. Also, we evaluate to provide some credible and useful information on what? The lessons learned, to help who? To help the partners and the funding agencies to make decisions whether they should continue funding the project or they should stop. You have seen some organizations receive funding for projects and they implement only within 2 to 3 years. And at the end of it all, there is no decision to continue implementing that same project. It's because from the evaluation study, the funders have decided to terminate the funding for that particular project. Maybe because the performance wasn't correct. And this brings me to the types of evaluation, which we'll be talking about: internal evaluation and external evaluation. Above all, when we combine monitoring and evaluation, we are looking forward, we want to value the effectiveness of every project management. And also, we want to emphasize on reporting, we want to emphasize on accountability. That is basically what monitoring and evaluation is. So this is just just to further buttress what I've been discussing here, you will get that when the slides will be shared with you, and you'll be able to make a difference as well between monitoring and evaluation. I'll be able to distinguish that. But on this, you can still get further differences to help you think more deeply about what monitoring is all about and what evaluation is. Now, when we are talking about monitoring, there are some fundamental questions that we need to bear in mind. The first question, are we doing the right things? What did we plan? What we plan, is it what we are doing? Are we doing the right things? Just imagine somebody who has been diagnosed of diabetes, but at the level of treatment, they are giving the treatment for malaria. Are we doing the right thing? Hello? Hello?
Hi, sir.
Yes, I just want to be sure that I'm not talking to myself. So each time I signal, please, there should be an indication that people are following.
Thank you, sir. We will do that. We'll do just that.
Yes, we are following.
Great. So the first question is, are we doing the right things? The second question, are we doing things right? These questions are not the same. Are we doing the right things? Are we doing things right? Doing the right thing is just basically say, this is what I plan. I plan to do a training on enterprise development. Yes, you're actually conducting that training. The next question can, are we doing things right? Are we doing things right? Maybe in the course of the design of the project, the emphasis was that we are going to train 20 startups. We are going to train 20 social entrepreneurs. And then at the end of the day, you begin the training phase and you have 200 people that you're training or 100 people that you are training. Are you doing things right? At this level, with this question, we are also fundamentally concerned about the process. How is the training taking place? Is the training virtual? Is the training face-to-face? What are the didactic materials that are involved? Are we doing things right? Apart from just doing the right things, are we doing things right? Monitoring and evaluation will be putting an eye on that, especially at the level of the monitoring. The next thing we need to look at when we are going out for monitoring, what lessons can we draw from the experiences for the implementation of particular activities? What can we learn from similar situations in the near future? So fundamentally, these are the questions that you need to respond to when you're thinking about monitoring. Monitoring will run across the planning phase, the implementation phase, right to the point where you have evaluation. So even at the evaluation stage, some form of monitoring is still taking place. But at that level, it's only complementing the evaluation process. I've tried as much as possible to be coming back again routinely to remind you what monitoring is all about. Again, this is just for emphasis. And I want you to pay attention to the fact that there are different types of monitoring. And I want to begin to start off by talking about progress monitoring. Progress monitoring is looking at what activities are being implemented within the program, within the organization, within the company. What is the progress that is being measured? Just imagine you taking up a child to sponsor a child as a project. It will be very important for you not to only wait for that child to come out at the end of the academic year with failed results. Then you do not do monitoring. Progress monitoring will warrant you to check whether during the first term, what was the performance of that child? The second term, what was the performance of that child? And then you will be able to make critical changes, critical recommendations, critical follow-up mechanisms when you valorize progress monitoring. Are we doing the project right? You need to focus on the outputs, you need to focus on the activities, as I have cited in the example. What is the value of monitoring, or what is the importance? Is monitoring of essence? Sometimes when we just hear about monitoring, we think that it goes without financing. It comes with a lot of financial implications. Just imagine having to program field trips to go find out if trainings are actually taking place in the field or not, if farmers are actually benefiting what they were supposed to benefit, if people that were earmarked for startup businesses, for startup capital, if they have actually received and their businesses are operational. It requires a lot of inputs, financially and materially. But above all, what is the value of it? It gives indication of progress. You should be able to report it, identify some problems that they are facing in the field, allows you to take corrective measures, and gives you the opportunity to assess the trends. Probably if you're working on a health program like the one I'm currently running now in Cameroon, with over 150 volunteers in the Northwest region who are campaigning against viral hepatitis, I'm able to put in place some credible indicators that is going to tell what progress they are making towards that campaign. Part of the quality assurance also comes at this level. And above all, monitoring will help you to measure your level of achievement at the level of the objectives. I will move on, and then just to say, there are key steps in monitoring. When you want to monitor, first, you're not going to monitor the entire project. Pick out a particular component of the project that's being implemented and go for that specific aspect of the project. That is why it's pretty difficult for somebody to say, I'm going to monitor the trainings that are taking place. At the same time, I want to go and monitor the farmers, whether they are planting and so on. No, monitoring responsibilities are decentralized. There is somebody who is picking out, either you organize them in a periodical manner that you need to progress as activities are going on, or you decentralize or you delegate monitoring roles to different persons within the organization. So after you specify, you need to decide on the scope, the area, what exactly do you want to go out to monitor. So for Mickey, what I will usually do most often is for every indicator, for every objective area within the project or program, I come up with a template that is specific to that objective with the key indicators, so that progressively I can monitor exactly what is happening in the field. After, you need to decide on the frequency. How often should you monitor the activities? Is it on weekly basis? Is it on monthly basis? Is it on quarterly basis? So you need to determine the frequency and the duration. Also decide on the data collection procedure. How are you going to collect the data? Are there some key stakeholders that you want to contact to collect quantitative and qualitative data from them? Select the indicators and the standards. The second part of the steps in monitoring goes with collecting the data, analyzing the data, reporting your findings, giving feedback, identifying the causes and effects, and then deciding on actions. Now, I want to talk particularly on collecting the data and analyzing the data. Data cannot be called information until it is being analyzed. Until you process data, you cannot get information from it. So just saying that 300 children are now attending school is no information. But it will only become information when we know that the data has been analyzed and we know that out of these 300 children, 50 are boys and 250 are girls. So from there, we'll be knowing that, okay, despite the fact that this program is aimed at improving school enrollment, it is not only encouraging, it is not actually benefiting the male students, but it's benefiting more of the female students. That now is information. So when you collect data, process the data to generate information that will be able to provide feedback and actions and implementation decisions that is going to shape the orientation of the project. Now, evaluation, again, I will just say I've given you highlights of what this is all about, and what the key question or the focus of evaluation is on achievement. What is the outcome of this? And are we doing the right project? Focus on the component objectives, the purpose, and the goal of the project. This is where relevance comes in. Are we doing the right thing? Are we implementing the same project that we plan to implement? So that is very important for you to know. When you are conducting an evaluation, these are the key questions that you ask yourself. One, were the objectives of the project met, or are the objectives of the project met? Is the goal achieved? What are the policies that were formulated? Are the policies implemented? Shall we continue the project, or we should halt here and terminate the project? What about quality? It's not just about saying that we have increased school enrollment. Has the percentage at the first school living and the common entrance, has the percentage at the GCE ordinary level and advanced level, has the percentage improved? It's not just about increase in number of children in school. So what is the quality? Shall we replicate our project in another environment? I remember when we were implementing the project for the Northwest, the African Development Bank project, the success rate in the Northwest warranted the African development team to recommend that the team in the Northwest should crossbreed the experiences and the best practices with their Southwest counterpart, which was a project implemented in the Southwest, still sponsored by the African Development Bank, called the ROMPI project. So you could see that there was some form of replication, but that can only come when we have adequately handled the aspect of evaluation. What is the beneficiary response? Sometimes you need to understand that when you are implementing a project, when you are implementing a program, when you are carrying out a business, sometimes it is not enough to know if you are doing well just by coming to find out from your record. Go to your beneficiaries, go to your customers that are visiting your business place, ask them the experience. If they tell you something positive, then you are in the right direction. If they tell you that there is so much waiting when they come to your shop, when they come to your shop, you don't even greet your customer, you don't even seek to find out how they're doing. So beneficiary feedback is very important when we are talking about evaluation. Why do we evaluate? You can get from the literature. We have covered that in the previous slide, but this is just further lay emphasis why we actually evaluate. So who is involved in the evaluation? Before I talk about who is involved in the evaluation, I want to take you back. Who does the monitoring? Monitoring is mainly done by internal people within the company, within the organization. But for evaluation, two categories of people are involved. The first is the internal evaluation that is conducted by the team that is implementing the program. This, we say, it is always good to clean your house before somebody from outside comes to realize that your house is dirty. So internal evaluation is conducted to prepare the stage for external evaluation. And that is usually commissioned by donors, by implementers, by the beneficiaries, and the wider community as a whole when they want to know what is happening exactly. So the fact that you receive money for a project, know that you are accountable to even people you did not know. The timing, from the beginning, we'll talk about formative and summative evaluation, which is usually, it happens before the project. Sometimes it comes in the interim phase. You have the end phase of it, and you also have impact assessment. So these are all different categories of evaluation, which you are going to definitely see. But when we remember that this is when you are categorizing evaluation in terms of timing. You have formative, you have the interim. The formative, you can also call it baseline assessment or baseline study. Then you have midline evaluation or interim evaluation. You have final evaluation or end time project evaluation or end of phase evaluation. Then after considerable period of time, you can come back to do what? To find out what impact that project has caused in the life of the community. That usually happens in the long run. But in terms of process here is actually what is happening, which is What I will not ask you to pay a lot of attention to it because you won't be exposed to this more often. What you'll be exposed to more often is the timing rather than the process. But you move on to the subject part of evaluation. You carry out evaluation in stages at the project level, at the program level, at the sector level, at the country level, and why not at the global stage? Now, let me pause here to give you a short difference between a project and a program, because sometimes many people use it interchangeably. A project is a designed intervention within a very short period of time with a given set of objectives constrained within a particular goal. But a program consists of a series of projects, and they tend to run for a considerable longer period of time. So while a project is a micro part of a program on its own part envelops a variety of projects. Let's take, for instance, Merino. For those who are from the Northwest, Merino is a program, but GP de Rodep is a project. Because within Merino, you have GP de Rodep, you have LIFIDEP, the livestock program, you have different projects that are running within the same program. So that is the basic difference I want to take note of. I will move on to the trends in evaluation. Basically, when you want to talk about how evaluation has been able to move, is I said from the beginning, evaluation is more systematic. It's carried out at a larger scale. It can be carried out from a thematic perspective. And then focus is on the process, the impact, the sustainability, what is there for us to learn, accountability, and then above all, to harmonize donor practices. Usually this is carried out in a joint action. You have different actors coming from different directions to say, we want to find out, using a multi-stakeholder approach, how this project has been able to make a difference in the life of the community. With evaluation, please, you are doing to justify the relevance, you are doing with the beneficiaries, and you are doing for the donor community. So pay attention to some of these very critical aspects of evaluation, because there is no robust evaluation that you will carry out without a reflection of what we are just discussing here. I did talk about the DAC criteria, and this is essentially why we carry out evaluation, to check out the relevance, the effectiveness, the efficiency, the impact, the sustainability. You get all of that, and then you can read further on your own. Some things to think about evaluation. Each time you talk about evaluation, politics is involved. Because sometimes when we move to the field to evaluate some projects, you'll find the organization trying as much as possible to make sure that you only visit some communities that they perform very well in those communities. They don't want you to see the mess of other communities. But as experienced evaluators, we already come with a foresight to say, no, we have to design our methodology, how we are going to collect the data, how biased and how unbiased and representative the study will be. So in that case, you need to understand the role that the organizational politics will play at this level. What about the privileges? It's a moment for you to showcase what you have been able to do. It's a privilege to tell the world how best you are doing what you are doing. And then above all, participation. We don't want to come and ask you who is implementing the project. What do you think? Do you think the project has gone so well? How can you be asking a thief whether he is a thief? It's not possible. So in terms of participation in the evaluation process, make sure that a diversity of stakeholders involved in the project are actually brought on board. What I'm doing now in Malawi is essentially like evaluating a program that has been sponsored by World Food Program and the US Department for Agriculture. So what I'm doing, I'm moving straight to the farmers. I'm also talking about meeting government officials. I'm meeting other NGOs. I'm meeting even the implementing agency themselves. I'm meeting different stakeholders involved. just because I want a variety of people to register their opinion about the program. I'll pause here and I'll expect, is there any question, concern that you want to raise?
Yes, I think I have a question.
Yes, please.
It's an interesting class. I must give that remark first. And I feel like I'm being built up into an auditor. So I wanted to ask, like, what's the difference between monitoring and evaluation officer and an internal auditor or an internal controller? Is it all a question of the different institution in which they work, or is it a question of just the name? I don't get it.
Okay, thank you very much for that very important question. Usually the appellation will vary from one organization to the other, but most often internal auditors will apply more to companies. When you hear of an internal auditor, you are mainly referring to a kind of a more profit-based driven organization. But within the NGO space, you still have auditors coming into place. But in that case, it is not somebody who is part of the implementation process. Within the NGO space, you talk essentially about monitoring and evaluation. Some organizations will just refer to them as monitoring officers. Some will say monitoring and evaluation officers or coordinators, but this is just completely different from auditing. Auditing is coming principally to check out how finances have been used, how you can justify what you have been able to use up in the field. So there is a clear difference, but I will still agree with you that the appellation will differ from one organization to the other.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any other concern, please?
So I would also like to ask in light of monitoring and evaluation. For example,
Yes.
take your case. You're in a place for doing something, and you realize that there have been solutions tailored to maybe ensure that some objective were attained for that particular demographic and everything. Then which maybe had not been cited in in your procedural way operations, in your, let me say, SOPs, the ways they had to go through. And you thinking that maybe if they should come back to the initial ways which they were stipulated, it will be better. So do you guys have the ability to make those decisions, or you only inform decision makers?
Right, thank you very much. Usually there is, in every project, there is what we call intended and unintended interventions. But usually, before you make any changes into a project design, you need to seek approval first from your donor. Secondly, that change must go through an appropriation process, which involves a series of stakeholders in the value chain. So making changes in a program design or in a project design or in a business operation is not a one-go initiative. It involves a series of stop points. It involves a series of voices for approval. My recommendation and my experience is that such changes are usually given based on donor approval. Those changes come if the appropriation process is feasible and relevant enough. But most often, this will be the fallout of your monitoring activities. When you are able to monitor, that is when you can bring in corrective measures. And that is why we are emphasizing that for every program, for every project, for every business, you need to install a robust monitoring and evaluation mechanism that will be there to give you the roadmap.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. And for the last one, I would like to also know, um, so there is no room for maybe say people's decision making and to solve maybe an urgency and everything. There is none in the NGO section, sector and everything.
Well, it depends. It depends what you call a kind of contingency. When we are budgeting for projects, personally, I write projects for organizations, and each time I'm at the budgeting stage, I do provide an allowance for contingency. And usually, I put a 5% or a 3% or a 2% of the overall budget to handle cases that may come up that we have not seen previewed before. But most likely, some donors do not want you to say, want to put a contingency amount. What the donors will want you to do is to run a proper risk analysis, to have a risk register, to have a risk matrix, so that you can be able to determine what is the potential risk factor, and if these risk factors occur, what is the impact on the project? And if it occurs, what exactly will you be doing? And all of those questions around the risk matrix will be letting you know that for every risk factor within the project, you need to budget for it correspondingly. So that if it happens, you have the budget for it. So the problem usually comes when people design projects and they fail to preview the risks and to budget for the risks.
Thank you very, very much. That was an excellent response. Thank you.
So can we proceed now?
We can, yes, so we can proceed, sir. We are there.
I'm getting you, sir.
Lovely.
I'm getting you.
Okay. So types of evaluation, I've already mentioned there are two types of evaluation, essentially, internal and external evaluation. External evaluation is usually conducted by an independent consultant. For the past 5 years or so, I have functioned both as an internal evaluator, and I've also served as an external evaluator across agencies in Cameroon and different parts of Africa. But what I will tell you, if you want to style yourself an independent evaluation consultant, there is a lot into it, as well as there is a lot of reward that comes with this, because people who pose themselves as monitoring and evaluation must have a certain level of integrity, that people can believe in you, that certain decisions and certain recommendations that can come from you are those that people can rely on them, people can depend on them. And so external or internal evaluation is a question of integrity. One is conducted by an independent person, the other is conducted mainly by people who are responsible for the implementation of the project. However, you find these evaluations that are coming, be it internal or final, they come at the level of midterm and final evaluations. Like I talked about the timing, categorizing evaluation in terms of timing. I talked about baseline survey, or what is carried out before the start of the project. I talked about midterm evaluation or interim evaluation. I talked about final evaluation or end of phase project evaluation. And I talked about impact assessment. So all of this you need to take particular note of how you can mainstream yourself within the different stages of the evaluation process. The pros and the cons are very evident. When you want to conduct an evaluation on your own, sometimes it's very difficult. I tell people, can you move to the mirror and give an objective criticism of who you are? Sometimes it's too difficult to criticize oneself. It requires somebody to serve as a mirror to tell you, so guy, this is what you are doing. I think you are doing well, but these are the weaknesses. So you need to think about the pros and the cons when you are valorizing maybe internal evaluation over external evaluation, or external evaluation over internal evaluation. But you have the literature you can flip over on your own to be able to see what exactly you need to lay emphasis on when you are conducting your monitoring and evaluation. Steps in evaluation, they are not very different from what I've been able to share for monitoring, but there are some few nuances that you will find there. Talking about the scope, this time around is a more broader scope, covering the entire project, but using a sample. Like what I'm doing now in Malawi, I have there should be about 400 farmer organizations that are benefiting from the program, which has taken a lot of money. But coming in, my budget for the research cannot accommodate for me to move around all the 400 farmer organizations. I need to do a sample. First, I sample at the level of the country, and I take a certain number of districts. I come at the level of the district, I sample a certain number of farmer organizations. I come to the level of the farmer organization, I sample a certain number of farmers, individual farmers, to be included in the study. All of this, I'm talking about the scope. Identifying the team is very important. I'm not working alone. I've been able to employ some research assistants who are working together with me, have to build their capacity on how to carry out this particular aspect of the study. What about the methodology? Yes, sometimes it's very important for you to reflect on the methodology of the evaluation, because the quality of your findings will depend on what method you actually use. For me, for instance, what I'm using now, I'm using I'm using a mixed method approach, qualitative and quantitative. And under quantitative, I'm administering questionnaires to households. And under qualitative, I'm conducting focus group discussion, in-depth interviews, key informant interviews, all of that. And then I'm getting to kind of a transect work, so that when you tell me that this project, because of this project, you have been able to build your house, I need to walk to your compound and be able to verify that this is how your house was looking before, and now this is how your house is looking. Before, you could sponsor your children only in a government school, but because of this project, you cannot send your children not only to government school, but to private schools. So that is sending me signals of something different. So what methodology, what indicators, what resources do you have at your disposal? What data do you want to collect? How are you going to analyze the data? How are you going to report the findings? For my work already here in Malawi, which is more like an evaluation of a program, WFP is waiting for a report. WFP is World Food Program. Food and Agricultural Organization is also putting an eye on my report. The government of Malawi, through the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Education, they are also looking up for my report. And then my host university in the UK, University of Reading School of Agriculture Policy and Development, they are also looking up for the report. So you find the multi-dimension in reporting. Above all, I have to disseminate my findings through publications. I have to get feedback when I'm presenting in conferences and workshops. What appropriate action can be taken by the agencies, because my work is going to leave the different stakeholders with recommendations. That is the essence of evaluation. Now, what are the key requirements for M&E? After I've exhausted what monitoring is, what evaluation is, let's look at what are the critical ingredients of M&E. Again, remember the questions I shared with you from the beginning. Are we doing the right things, and are we doing things right? Key requirements. One, you have the baseline data. You need to know where you are starting. If you want to measure what has changed, you cannot measure what has changed when you don't know what was there before. What is the project goal? What are the objectives? What are the outputs? What are the activities? What are the indicators? When we talk about indicators here, please, we are making allusion to both the quantitative and the qualitative indicators. I gave an example, very simple example. It is not just for us to know that 300 children have started going to school, or it's not enough for us to know that dropout rates have actually been reduced. No, What is the performance indicator? What is changing? What is the quality of results? GCSE results are just out. I'm not just interested in knowing that somebody has passed in 10 papers. What is the quality of the grades? So those indicators must be there, and we must be able to follow them succinctly. What is the method of data collection, means of verification, all of those things you are going to see. So I would have loved to end here, but this other part of it that talks about results, methods, and evaluation, please, I'm just going to flip over because the essence of this session was to cover on monitoring and evaluation. So this part of it is just like an added bonus to widen your scope of understanding when you are talking about monitoring and evaluation. I'm thinking about you embracing yourself into what inductive evaluation is and what deductive evaluation is. This is more in the research. It will help you. If part of your MBA program is to write up a piece of the research, then this is where you need to pay a lot of attention because it's going to help you. Inductive evaluation approaches will move from the specific to the general, but the deductive will start from the general perspective and move to the specific. Let's take, for instance, you want to know what difference this project is making in the life of children in the rural communities. Now, it will suffice that if you want to follow the inductive approach, it will want you to begin from the household level, examining what is happening with the lives of children at the household level. But if you're using a deductive approach, you need to first of all go to the national level, to the ministries that are concerned, and you start finding out information, consulting documentation, then you trickle down to the region, you trickle down to the division, you trickle down to the subdivision, right down to the household. That is a deductive approach that you are using. This I'm not going to pay a lot of attention because you can get that on your own, and I've already been talking about all of these things. Please bear with me. This is just an addition, and they are very simple for you to understand as we move on. Let me talk about tensions in evaluation. There are usually very big tensions in evaluation. The first tension coming in terms of money. I'm doing a piece of academic research, which is more of an evaluation. And I initially budgeted 5 million francs CFA to conduct my research within 6 months for a PhD. And as I speak, I'm looking for additional funding already to tell you how robust, how resources, financial resources are required to run this kind of an initiative. What about timeframes? It's very important. If you can look very critically, I'm right now in the field. Being in the field, I need to spend a certain duration in the communities. And it is needed in evaluation for you to be able to live with the people you want to evaluate with. Is my work going to be independent or is going to be participatory? Is it going to be quantitative or is it going to be entirely qualitative? I've already told you my work is both qualitative and quantitative. What about accountability? What about learning? What about if it is going to be jointly carried out by a group of different organizations? What about the cultural paradigms? The purpose and the utilization of the findings of the evaluation? All of these things are critical tensions where people need to pay a lot of attention when they are conducting evaluation. This is a framework I kind of propose for anybody who wants to get into evaluation. After this, your MBA program, you can develop interest in M&E. There's a lot to get from it. For me to carry out a kind of end-of-year project evaluation for an organization, if I'm speaking to Cameroonians, you won't pay me less than 5 million to come and do that in a space of maybe 2 or 3 months maximum. So there's a lot that goes in, but there is also a reward that you get from the entire process. The framework continues, which is just to help you position things. I was, after this session, I will still be very open for you people to reach out to me with some critical question, maybe through Mr. Joybert, and I will be very happy to respond to you. How standardized are the interventions and the settings and the groups whose lives will be changed? These are all questions that we have already been asking ourselves. But please pay attention to some of these scenarios. I've been able to give some scenarios. Just go through them on your own. They will help you. Strategies for evaluation. First, address big aims and policies within the scope of the program. Secondly, you need to tell what has improved, what has changed. Third, you need to know which are the stakeholders that are going to be involved in the entire process. What are the administrative procedures that you need to fulfill as part of the evaluation process? And then from the systematic perspective or the systemic perspective, you need to improve the wider institutional arrangements around the evaluation process, be it formal or informal. Remember, when you move to the field, they will start asking you, well, who gave you the authorization? Can we see any proof, any permit that you are coming to conduct this evaluation? All of those things, they need to be put in place for you to move on. Above all, let your work around evaluation come out with some performance management recommendations. And I'm kind of just flipping because that is just an explanation of all of those things that I've highlighted. And please, I will pause here to say that is essentially what M&E is all about. I know I've kind of quickly moved. We are at 90 minutes past 8 o'clock. And I was meant to handle the session for 2 hours. And I want to reserve the rest of the time for us to discuss the practicalities, those things you want to hear Mickey speak to you, exemplify them for you, and also to clarify some of the doubts that you may have. Thank you so much. Together, let's strive towards becoming monitoring and evaluation experts. Thank you.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Mickey, for that amazing session. All right, people, it's time for questions. Raise up your hand, or you type your question in the chat box, and Mickey will intervene. This is it. This is it. As I told you guys, M&E is a critical skill for every serious executive and entrepreneur. All right, questions. You know how we do it. No questions. Yes, Honorine, go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Mickey.
Good evening.
Thank you for your expose and trying to initiate us into monitoring and evaluation. One question I have is, what's the difference between a monitoring and evaluation expert and auditor?
Okay.
Is it just at the level of the fact that the auditor does financial, let me say, evaluation?
Thank you.
What's the
Thank
difference?
you so much. That question is coming up again. Like you rightly indicated, auditors are so much concerned about what is happening with the budget, with the budgetary part of it. Essentially, are there some justification? You say you spent this. What are the justifications? Are they receipts? Are they well dated? Can we verify them? And all of those things. That's the work of an auditor. But the M&E is entirely involved with the life of the project. What is happening at the level of activities? What is happening at the level of implementation? What is happening at the level of the financial part of it? So an M&E is like the overall eye of the entire organization or the entire project. But auditors will only come one off to make sure that your expenditure is justifiable. What you spend on is what you actually plan to spend on. So all of those things, that is the dividing line. Why the work of an M&E is more broadened, the work of an auditor is a reduced one-time of event or activity that comes and goes.
My next question. In the differentiation between internal M&E and external evaluator, one of the major things you wrote there was that for internal evaluation, it is subjective. The question I'm asking is, what can you do as a project manager who has limited resources and wants to have an objective evaluation of your project? How do you change this weakness, given that you maybe cannot afford an external expert and you need to do it internally? How can you flip this weakness and stay objective, even if you're doing the evaluation from the inside?
Thank you so much for that question. I think it's a relevant question for this session. Usually, there is no room, absolutely no room for you to say you don't have enough resources to commission an external evaluator. It is a donor requirement. So when you are doing your planning for your project, what you do, donors will not even validate your project for funding when they don't see this critical component for monitoring and evaluation. So M&E is budgeted, and more or less, you have less control over who is coming to evaluate as an external evaluator. But for internal, you have the right to be able to look at yourself, to look at what you are doing and ask yourself if what you are doing is the right thing and if you are doing the right things, if you are doing things right. Remember, I said it's always good for you to clean up your house before you allow somebody from outside to come and discover how dirty you are. So I want to speak this very critically. Most of you are going to leave this MBA program and you start setting up enterprises of your own or setting up development initiatives of your own. The reason you will be visiting most of these donor agencies, and when you go to eligibility countries, you find Cameroon is kicked out of it. It's because of some of these malpractices that have been able to occur at this level. Because we lack accountability, we lack transparency, and more or less, we tend to write reports on things that we have not even done. And when these donors send independent observers, independent evaluators to come and check out whether this person will fund his or her project, please go and find out whether this person has actually done what he said he has done in his internal report. Now you see a dichotomy of the subjectivity and objectivity. I'm pinning it down to our case because Cameroon has been known to be very notorious in telling people what they have not done. I have personally been in the field to investigate some of the projects that have been sponsored by the UK government, and the commission, they just, Nikki, please, can you go to this community, this division, and find out if this organization actually exists, and find out if this organization is actually doing this. I have personally moved to some organization, and we have been able to work for some organization to lose their funding and to move out of the space of implementation because of some of these malpractices. So it's very important. There is no way we should navigate around trying to hide our weakness. We need to fight to strengthen it. And the only way is to budget for internal evaluation and budget for external evaluation. Be ready and be open for accountability and transparency. Thank you so much.
From your response, you are referring to a particular case scenario where you're working on a project where you're getting external funding. I'm talking about you as a person. I start up my company. Monitoring and evaluation is part of, my core values. In short, it should be part of the things I do to make sure that I'm continuously improving.
Yes.
That was the direction of my question. But given your explanation, it seems the weaknesses you gave are limited to a context where you're getting external funding. I'm talking of an entrepreneur.
Okay.
Business. He wants to do objectively without needing an external motivation to do it right. How do you flip that weakness? Because maybe I understood what you meant by subjective. Because generally, I'll be subjective in my evaluation of my business.
Hello.
If I'm getting external funding to impress my external or my funders or my donors. But why would I be subjective in my evaluation of my business, which depends on me, which is funded by capital that I put in place? I think that was where my challenge was and why I was asking the question.
Lovely. Thank you so much again for pinning it down to that level. And I would just say, if you can remember in my presentation, I asked about people being able to do an auto-critique of themselves. Very few people will be able to acknowledge their own weaknesses. However, it becomes imperative for you to put a mechanism that you always have a second, third opinion coming in, even for your own private business. Let me take, for instance, I'm currently carrying out an initiative in Cameroon, just recruiting volunteers to campaign against viral hepatitis. I am doing the sponsorship. I don't have an external sponsorship for that activity. But what am I doing? I have people on ground who are able to link up and say, Mickey, we think that this is what you're doing. We think that it can be improved in this way, in this way. So whatever the case, be it at the individual level or at the corporate level where you are receiving funding, you need to mainstream a mechanism that is going to help you to tell you whether you are progressing in the right direction. It is too dangerous to be successfully wrong. It is too dangerous to be successfully wrong. That is why you find some people. Let me take, for instance, if your project is to sponsor a child in school from nursery school to the university. Have you seen children who graduate from the university and discover that what they actually study and earn a degree is not what they actually wanted in life? So it's very possible to be successfully wrong. But if you put mechanisms in place for your private business, for a corporate initiative, those mechanisms for monitoring and evaluation will help you to emerge in the right direction. I'll be very open, please. You can handle me backstage after this session with something that is so peculiar to you, and I'll be happy.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, good. Next question.
Any other question?
Another question, please?
Yes, good evening. I'm Alain Beng, and I just want to quickly applaud the session. It was quite very rich, and I don't really have a question. Maybe I just want to get some counsel. How do you become an M&E expert? Is there a certain route that you have to take, tailored courses, and how do you do it to become an expert of such a level?
Alain, thank you for that question. I think it's a brilliant question. And getting from you, I see somebody who has ambitions to become an M&E in the future, beginning from now. And I want to say that the starting point is where you are now. Undertaking this session prepares you already to begin to think more broadly how to get into it. There are a lot of free online courses. The Future Learn. Hello. Yeah, Future Learn will give you a lot of free online courses that you can sign up, and then one aspect is for you after this, either in the process of this MBA program or after the MBA program, will be for you to sign up with development organizations with a well-refined monitoring and evaluation unit to volunteer, to intern, and gain practical work skills in these agencies. I want to highlight, to share with you that before I rose to a national and international stage as an M&E advisor, I had to volunteer with very distinctive organization, and only the volunteering opportunity earned me a position within the UN, where I serve as an expert group member with UN Habitat for the monitoring and evaluation, but it stemmed from kind of volunteerism with an agency that I went to, and I didn't want any pay. I just wanted practical skills because I designed myself. I want to become an M&E expert or specialist or advisor. So please, my advice: 1, sign up for short courses. 2, volunteer with organizations with a very refined M&E units. That will be good for you. Above all, get an M&E mentor.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for that advice.
Okay, great. Another question? Should we say all questions are exhausted?
Especially her meeting needs to go to bed quite early.
Yeah, you guys are 1 hour ahead. Okay, if there's no question, then I think we can round up here. Thank you so much, Mickey, for creating almost 2 hours of your time to share your expertise and the experience with us. Hopefully, in case somebody wants to, please, you can connect with Mickey. He's not on Facebook. I think Twitter and LinkedIn is better, so you can find me.
Yeah, they can follow me on Twitter. On Facebook, you can only pull on Mickey through my organization, Community Vision Group. That's what you can find on Facebook, which I'll be happy to drop the link here. You can still get Mickey, but you will not find my name there. You only find the name of the organization. But you can find me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, that's fine.
Excellent. All right, people. Do have a great night.